Amen. I'd like to welcome to Shul Henry Israel. Refuah Shlema continued, and it's special to see him here again. Erev Tov, everyone. This week we have a double parsha, Matot and Maaseh. And there's a central theme in each of the parshas. In the parsha of Matot, we meet the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven. Jewish people are on the threshold of entering Eretz Yisrael. Moshe is entering the last month of his life. He has appointed Yoshua as his successor. And the goal that he set for himself is within sight. Because when he began his mission, the Rebbeinu Shalom told him that he would bring the Jewish people to Eretz Yisrael. We have the 5 Lashonos, the 5 verbs that are used regarding the redemption from Egypt. The last one, Behevesi, that I will bring you to Eretz Yisrael. That's the culmination. And it's the culmination of the Lord's promise to Avraham Avinu, Do Revi Yeshuva Eino. That after all of the experiences of Mitzrayim and the desert, we're going to come back to Eretz Yisrael. And I'm going to give you the land. You'll conquer it and you'll settle it, and it'll be your land, and you'll be attached to it forever. So at the end, here comes the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven, and they say, we're not going. We have a lot of mikneh. It was a shul in Chicago called the Bnei Reuven, and they had a great dispute with the Rav. And the Rav got up and he said there were a lot of behemoths with the Bnei Reuven. We have a lot of cattle, and this Transjordan, Eretz Miknehu, V'lavadecha Mikneh. It's a perfect shidduch here. We can make a living. It's a soil, but we're talking here practical. Moshe is initially taken back by this. He responds very strongly. The same generation, your forefathers, what happened with the Meraglim? You didn't learn anything from 40 years in the desert. Loma Saniyun, why should you weaken the Jewish people? Why should you lower their morale? What is with you? And underlying all of this is that you don't think that the Lord can give you the ability to be successful and make a living in Eretz Yisrael without the pasture land here? How can you say these things? But they persisted. Jews are always persistent, for good or for better. There's still communists among us, never learned. So they come to a compromise with Moshe. We'll go first. We'll be the commando troops. We'll devote 14 years that everybody else does. Then we'll go home. We'll build cities and sheds for our cattle, etc., etc. Chazal say, "B'derech Shodom Rotzeh leilech molichino." You really want it? Okay, so we'll give it to you the way you want it. Again, for good or for bad. One of his Rav told me, he said, he said it about that generation of American Jews that still were European. He said the only place in Shmona Esrei they had kavona was for parnosim. So the Rebbeinu Shalom gave it to him. The rest of it didn't happen because they didn't mean it. So that's one story. The second story is in Parshas Maseh, which at first glance looks like a travelogue. Over 40 way stations, the Jewish people stopped in the desert. We don't even know where these places are. Why does the Torah go through such a length? What's the difference? Could say Vayisu Mechore Vayachnu Al Yarden Yerecho from Sinai. 40 years later, 38 years later, they came to the Jordan, and now they're going to cross the Jordan and there it's Israel. What import is all of the details of where they stopped? So Rashi here quotes the famous Rav Moshe Darshan that every place they stopped is a reference to something that happened there. So it's like a father tells his son, you know, we took a trip and you got sick here and we had an accident here and we had trouble here and this happened here. So when you recount the trip, so you tell the experiences that happened on the way. But the question still remains that in the Torah, which oftentimes when it wants to give us messages, is very, very short, candid, doesn't say a lot. And here, it's a whole thing. Not only we have a niggin for it, Balkori sings it. So what's the import here? There are many, many pshatim. I remember the older you become, the younger you become. Because you remember what happened when you were 12 years old. You don't quite remember what happened when you were 85, but you remember 12 years old. And there's a benefit to that because you don't think of it on the way to being an older person. Once you get that 12, then it's so I was 12 years old, I was in the yeshiva. And the Rebbe was a great Talmud Chacham, Eastern European Jew, holy man, but we didn't realize it then. And every Friday he used to say Dvar Torah. And we thought it was boring because we didn't quite understand where he was coming from. And we certainly didn't understand what we were supposed to do with it. And I remember in Parshas Maseh, he discussed the fact that you had this tremendous travelogue that the Torah recorded for us. They went Vayisu, Ayachme, went Rismo, Iloso, all of these places. So he said something. He said in the Torah is responding to the Bnei God of Bnei Reuven. The Torah is telling them, look what you went through to get here. Look at the journey that you went to. Look how many places you had to stop. So look, every place is a miracle. And you get here, and what do you say? I'm not going. So he said that was the Torah's response. The Torah told Moshe to make a compromise. That's in the real world. He made a compromise. They settled the matter, but in practical effect, all the Meforshim point out that when they got him, even went into Golus before anybody else. And that the kingdom in Transjordan lasted the shortest time of all of the Jewish kingdoms that were in the land of Israel. And that in the terms of halacha, it never acquired the Kedusha. It never acquired the status of Eretz Yisrael itself. So it's a rebuke to the Jewish people. Look at what you went through. And now you tell me you're not going? So I remember when COVID broke out, so there was somebody that had to go to America, felt that he had to go to America. He couldn't get a ticket. And I knew somebody at El Al. I knew somebody that knew somebody at El Al, which in Israel is enough. And I called him up, and in the middle of the night and everything, he calls me back, and 10 phone calls back and forth. I called the guy up in the morning. I said, you have a seat on the plane? He said, I'm not going. So I thought to myself, and I used up my favor because now somebody is going to go. What do you mean you're not going? That's what the Torah says here. L'maseh b'nei Yisrael. These are the stations, the journey of the Jewish people to get here. How can you say that you're not going? And if we look at it in the big picture, so that's a good question for our time. What do you mean you're not going? After 1,800 years of Golus, after Bovril and North Africa and Spain and Bohemia and Germany and England and France and Ukraine and Poland and Russia and Hungary, you're not going? Strange people. Very strange people. It's Muzar mode. So my Rebbe said, so he said this Dvar Torah. We didn't know what in the world he was talking about. We used to ask him, Rebbe, where's your mokar? Where's the source of what you said? He said, if I'm telling you, don't bother me for a mokar. And later on in life, I understood the greatness of that statement too. He taught us the white spaces in the Torah, not just the black letters. So therefore, the Torah came to teach us that, it's a long journey. It took a lot to get to the shores of the Yarden. So you cannot be faint-hearted now. You can't tell me now you're not going. So the Torah begins, the story of Moshe rather, begins by Moshe saying, I'm not going. Shlach b'yad tishlach. Send somebody else, not me. Rabbi Shalom doesn't accept that. He says, Moshe, I took you out of the Nile. I saved you from the crocodiles. I raised you in the king's palace. What do you mean you're telling me you're not going? And at the end, that's the complaint to the Jewish people, the challenge. It's a challenge. It's not just a complaint. It's a very difficult situation. No easy answers. But the Torah poses it for us so that we would realize the importance of Eretz Yisrael and the journey and the way stops that it took us to be able to get here. Rabbi Chananya ben Akashi Omer Rotzach HaKadosh Hu V'Zakos Es Yisrael Lefichach Hirbo Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar. I don't know if I've